Good morning. I was I set up automatic payments for one of my utilities. It was like it's the last thing I have that isn't on automatic payment because it was like this archaic system like of printing out this paper and sending them like a voided check and all sorts of BS. And I sent the paperwork in, and they called me up and said, this is such and such from the city. And I'm like, hello. They're like, I just want to confirm that you want to go automatic payment for your utility bill. And I said, yes. And there's just silence. And she went, okay, have a good day. I'm like, thank you. And then she went, and then hung up. And what does that mean? I'll tell you, I fucking get that a lot. Here's what I think is happening. I think that they're expecting about 30 words from me and a little bit of personal backstory and a little bit about like, you know what, your ability to, like, my trying to get you to do automatic payment, that's like really difficult. Most people, you can just do it online, but you have to print up a stuff, and I don't have a printer. Like, I just wanted to know that, like, gosh, that, like, and it happens all the time. Like, I found Akila's adoption papers when I was going through the shed, and I remember, like, you go sit in a room with your dog, but I guess a staff member has to be present. And so we go into the room, and like I sit down on a bench, and the guy kind of stands in the corner, and Akila just kind of like runs around, looks at the toys, and he looks out the window, and he checks the water bowl. He's scared by a little stone statue that's in the corner, so he investigates it after starting away from it. And the guy kept like looking at Akila and looking at me nervously and looking at Akila and looking at me nervously. And I'm just sitting there watching. And he's like, oh, go ahead and meet, this guy. And I'm like, no, you leave him alone. Like, I don't want to see what you can make him do. I want to see what he wants to do. And and then he was just silent the entire time. And Akila eventually came over and investigated me. He was going to investigate everything in the room, but people were last. And then I like turned to the guy and I'm like, okay, I'll take this dog. He went, oh, what? I'm like, I'll take this dog. He went, I went, is this was like the prerequisite for the adoption process, right? It's like, well, yeah. I'm like, well, I want to adopt this dog. And the guy went, and I went, is that not how this works? He's like, oh yeah. I'm just pretty sure that guy was expecting like just all sorts of like me doing stuff and me talking and me like rolling around on the ground playing with the dog, and like I just really feel it, like we like a lot like locked eyes, and this like I got like this like feeling that our souls were like once together, and now we're reunited. And how long have you been working here? Hey, what time do you close today? Has this price always been the same? What do you feed these dogs? A common thing that happens is someone will ask me a question, and I'll be around a bunch of people, and I'll be like, hey, is there like a Wendy's around here? I'm like, do you have a smartphone? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, pull out your smartphone, and there's a little microphone button. You just touch that and go, closest Wendy's to me. And here's what happens a lot. Someone's like, well, that guy just like, why didn't you just answer that guy? I'm like, well, I don't know where the closest Wendy's is. He's like, well, then you say that. And I'm like, but he wanted to know where the closest Wendy's is. Like, so it didn't seem like what he wanted me to tell him was, I don't know. What he wanted me to tell him is like the location of the closest Wendy's. Get out your phone, hit the little microphone button, say, closest Wendy's to me, location. He asked me, he finds out. The guy's like, well, you just wanted like some human interaction. And I'm like, that's not human interaction. Like, what time is it? Like one of my girlfriends used to say it to me like every 6 minutes, is not human interaction. Give me directions to the airport is not human interaction. Why do you like Godzilla movies? That's human interaction. And frankly, there's a lot of NPC-like human interaction that happens on such a regular basis that, like, it is the very definition of NPC behavior. Like, every single time that you walk into the city gates, the guard goes like, I too used to be an adventurer, but then I took an arrow to the knee. And he says it to the next guy, and the next guy, and the next guy. And everyone gets in these routines of like responding in the same way, or like when they go into a restaurant and their hostess or host is like, oh, 1 second, we're gonna get this table cleared. They're like, oh, pretty busy, huh? Probably the church crowd getting out. Man, I bet your feet hurt at the end of the day. My mother used to be a waitress. What? You know, and that would be okay if you heard that like a couple times a year. But if you hear it all day, every day, it's the idea of like, if you walk up to somebody and they're like, they look like they're about 7'1" and 7'2", and you're like, man, you're tall. They say stuff, then you go, how tall are you? And then another one of my favorites, bet you were good at basketball. You know, I think that some people hear the same repetitive phrases over and over again, and in their mind they equate that with like, that person has some good conversational skills. Because like, at the second they walk in, they start talking and get people to interact with them. And that's what they really want. They just want, I want you to interact with me. I don't not want to talk or have a human connection or be personable, or that you have something that might be valuable or interesting to say. You know, not that it always has to be. But the whole thing of like, what time do you close? Like, you're here now. What time do you close tomorrow? Like, are you coming here tomorrow? Well, I might. Why don't you just get what you want here right now? You're like, you're like, because they were not asking, really, what time you close tomorrow. And I know that for a fact, because a lot of times, like, after like answering like the 30, 40 questions of that revolve around your hours, and they sit down all content and happy, and their wife or their husband turns to them and say like, what time do they close? And they go, oh, what time do you close again? They didn't hear a thing. Because they weren't really asking. Like, they were having human interaction in NPC style. Oh boy, oh boy. Some days there's not enough coffee in the world.